It's T, back with a review of the TRM Atom. TRM is Three Rivers Manufacturing. They're a USA-based company that would manufacture knife parts for other American companies. And eventually they realized, hey, why don't we just make our own knives on top of tooling other ones? Now, these are a little bit hard to find, not on anything intentional from the maker's part. They have their regular order book of OEM orders, and then they use their other tools and what have you to make these guys. And so it leaves them with kind of limited stock. And since they've been such a massive success and people are so in love with them, they're expanding, so you should be seeing more and more of these TRMs on the market over the coming years. Right now, let's get into the stats. Right now, the TRM Atom goes for $405 for the titanium scaled version. I said all of that about their manufacturing because I don't know if that means it may come down a little bit in the future. They are about $380, if I remember right, for the untextured version. The overall length is 8 3/16 of an inch. The handle alone is a 4 11/16 of an inch. The knife thickness is 0.39 inches, so that's less than half of an inch wide in your pocket, and I can tell you from experience it carries great. The weight is only 3 ounces, making it very light, largely due to that very thin blade and titanium scales. The thickness of the blade itself is an ultra slicey 0.09 inches. That's right, it's only 9/100ths of an inch thick. The steel is a CPM 20 CV powder steel, which is a excellent high quality premium steel, retains an edge amazingly. It's got a full flat grind on it, a liner lock. It rotates on phosphor bronze washers, has a really well made titanium clip, great springiness, doesn't hold itself down too hard, and it's made here in the USA. So the blade itself is really what shines about this knife. The geometry is basically perfect for cutting tasks, placing the blade nice and forward, not too much curve here, so you can easily get a rock in. It cuts like a absolute laser through just about anything, and is probably the sharpest knife I've ever had out of the factory, and just out of the box. The factory sharpen on these things is fantastic. I would put them up and say probably the best sharpening job out of the factory from an American-made knife company that's production, that's not custom. Some other cool things about the blade, the little logo here, these 3 rivers, are, it's actually engraved in there pretty deep, as you can tell. And then on the other side, their info, TRM 20 CV USA, that's also just lightly laser engraved in there. The finish is pretty luxurious, because on top of being a standard stone wash, what they did is it's a type of double stone wash. Then they do another process to finish it. Or it's a satin grind, a stone wash, something else, and then they finish it with a tumble in ball bearings. So you get this this incredible and incredibly hard to mess up stonewash on here. Like you can see my fingers, you can see my fingerprints, but it's much more difficult than just about any other knife. And it doesn't look scratched up. It looks truly tumbled in just layers of buffing. Really stunning stuff in my opinion, and probably the knife that made me start to love stonewash and really enjoy that. The thumb studs are something that is probably a weak point of the knife unless you have an O-ring to put on them. I will link the size of O-ring I have on here, because you can spend about, I think it's about $7 for O-rings from TRM, or you can just buy a whole pack of them off Amazon for the same price or less. So that's what I did. Actually, I just used ones that had been for a keyboard, but that's a long story. Anyway, without, it can really start to jam in and cut up your finger, and it's an entirely different experience once you put an O-ring on here. Now, one thing for big symmetry fans, you can't get an O-ring on this side and get it to close right. So it's right hand only. So I would highly recommend that everybody keep that in mind. So let's talk about opening, smoothness, flickability, all of that. As I said before, this can cut into your hand a bit, but once you have the O-ring, it feels excellent. It doesn't rock it out. It's one of those knives that does not have a detent ball of any type, so the detent is kind of by friction. It's easy to flick, simply because you just scoop this with your thumb and flick out. Very easy. Or you can do a classic push flick, but that puts your finger much closer to that blade edge. So I just put that here. Let's take a slight detour to talk about that choil. You can't get a finger grip up here, but you can sharpen the blade right all the way up until the edge, and that's an amazing feature to have on a knife. As someone who's kind of a beginner sharpener, and trust me, I'm not going to make any attempts with this thing for a second, but as somebody who's kind of a beginner by hand sharpener, having it come right up to here instead of getting thicker or thinner at the edge is a real treat. And it's a real thoughtful design aspect that makes me fall in love with what they put into this knife. Now, it's ultra flickable. It's very smooth, though when I first got it, it had a bit of a shing sound. It wasn't actively scraping the side, but something in there was scraping a bit. For ambidextrousness, I would not recommend it. This thing is only right hand carry for a reason, because there's a really good cutout here to flick, while on the other hand, on the other end, there's just not. You can get it open, and I've seen other people say they could do it, but I can't. The textured titanium handles feel fantastic in the hand. The ergonomics are probably some of my best on a knife. I don't feel any hot spots. It's not something that's contoured to each finger like, say, a sniper blade works or something like that, but the overall shape is just very conducive to the human hand and daily use. As I said before, it puts the blade kind of forward to get a good cutting action that makes sense. Feels kind of like an extension of your hand. The aforementioned cutout here is pretty much perfect. You can just slide your thumb along it. And the machining is incredibly fine. Look at that. It is just a fantastic attention to detail here. The diamond pattern on the titanium is basically perfect coming in and out of pockets, in my opinion, because the way it's designed, it gives your hand a lot of lockup sideways, while on the other hand, going back and forth out of your pocket, there will be some abrasion and some rub, but it's pretty much designed to flow that way. And then just the layout and how they have it done looks so good. There's a slight radial pattern to it as it expands outwards. They get bigger, and then all the way down to tiny down here. So I am in love with that. The lockup is pretty solid, about 50%, I guess. What is that? Yeah, that's about 50%. But 100% lockup would probably be bad on this thing, because if you pull it in here, you can take a look and see it's one of those angled liners, so it's designed to progressively lock tighter and tighter as it slides more and more in, so it doesn't need full lockup. One thing I'd like to point out, my example of the TRM Atom is not, the blade is not perfectly centered, and I have disassembled and reassembled it once, well, twice actually, but it came this way. It came uncentered, so I just want to point that out. Buyer beware. I'm not sure if it's something with the thickness of the blade combined with the liner lock pushing it to the side. You see, you can just kind of, just with a little force, and boom, perfect. Or what? Or if it's just, or if mine is just a off copy. But personally, I don't care that deeply. I wish it was centered, you know, I wish everything was perfect, but the overall quality of the knife and use, etc., outweighs that for me. If you're somebody who's incredibly OCD about that, maybe it won't be the case for you, so I have to point it out. The hardware is, I believe, also titanium. I'll have to double check that. But the hardware is simple Torx screws, and then the clip is excellent, very springy, a nice big deep carry loop. It's not ambidextrous. It has a lanyard hole here, and it's incredibly easy sliding in and out of pockets. This whole knife is super svelte, feels super good coming in and out of your pocket. It's forget it's there light, yet feels very well made and very sturdy in the hand. It still feels like a tool, yet simultaneously something like a fine pin as well. It's like somewhere between Milwaukee drill and Mont Blanc pen, which is a strange comparison, I know, but I think it may get the point across. Overall, I'm kind of in love with this knife. When I can't think of what else to carry, it's what I carry with me. When I want something easy and not very tactical, it's what I carry with me. It has really treated me well, and I'm absolutely in love with it. So, rating out of 10, I'm I'm going to say 8 out of, yeah, let's give it an 8 out of 10. You know, I don't feel comfortable giving a knife with a that's not perfectly centered a 9 out of 10. So we're taking a point off there. And then the fact that it's not ambidextrous and perhaps a little bit more than I would like to spend on this knife. I would like it at about $300. $320 to $50 is, I think, a good price, and that's with the textured titanium. I understand that titanium's super hard to tool, it takes a lot of machining, etc., but it's just what I would like to see. I'm not speaking on the economic feasibility or their specific economics. So I think it's really tough between an 8.5 and an 8, but an 8 is going to be the way to go. So, thanks guys. I've been Cheap T. You guys have a good one. Later.